So my name is John Grady Burns. I was born and reared in Natchez, Mississippi. I'm fortunate to be back home now. Been home for 4 years. I have 7 siblings and 6 of them live here in Natchez, so that was part of my wanting to come back here one day. I was raised in a large Catholic family. We went to a Catholic school, and we're all very close and still remain very close today. I'm very fortunate that all 8 of us are alive. I guess my profession today was all by accident. It was not planned. I often wondered what I'd end up doing later in my life, and I went to school to be a school teacher, and it was during the 70s, and I got into house plants and had a party one weekend, and somebody said, "You must be a horticulturist." And I said, "A what?" And they said, "A horticulturist." And I said, "What is that?" They said, "It's the study of plants." So little did I know that I could get a degree from college growing plants. So changed my degree to horticulture. Through horticulture, I ended up finding floral design and ended up in floral design and horticulture. I really thought that I'd make my living in the plant world, but as it turned out, every door that opened for me was in the flower world. So I would go through that door, I'd do the best job I could, and next door that opened was in flower world again. So I ended up living in Atlanta, working for myself for 30 years, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. I was a freelance designer, and I designed weddings, parties, and events, and it was quite an experience to be able to create beauty for people who trusted me to create things for their special days, whether it be a wedding or an anniversary. I also met a lot of wonderful people there who took me down paths that I may not have found had I not moved away from Natchez as a young person. I was fortunate enough to be able to publish 4 coffee table books and met 2 most delightful partners who turned out to be sisters, Jill and Kathy. And the 3 of us together with our photographer Bart created 3 beautiful books that I'm very proud of. I did do my first book by myself with the help of a lot of friends, I should say, and Bart was my photographer there as well. Well, that was something I never dreamed I'd ever do. It was quite an experience. When I finished college, I was asked to go to Washington, D.C. to work for a flower shop that worked closely with the White House and other embassies and dignitaries. So that was quite a privilege for me to be able to do that. I'll never forget it. It was my first time to Washington, D.C., and it's an experience I will never forget. I've been back since, but that first one was quite wonderful. I have many nieces and nephews that I'm very close with. I have some great nieces and nephews, and it's hard to say it, but I actually have some great nieces and nephews. I find that kind of interesting at the age of 63. And of course, I guess I had my first great 10 or 12 years ago, which prior to that I had never heard before. I'd always heard great aunts and uncles, but never great. So it's kind of an honor to be able to have 1, 2, 3 great nieces and nephews. I love being back in Natchez, as Natchez is such a beautiful small town, and it's a wonderful feel. People are very close and friendly, and it's almost like I never left town when I returned. I just felt like I stepped right back into where I left off. And it's nice to be able to be here and continue creating beauty, and opened a small retail shop that specializes in plants, orchids, floral design. Although I'm not a flower shop, I do flowers for special events. I recently purchased Howell Gardner bridal registry, so that's a nice addition to my shop, being I like to work with brides doing their flowers. So this past year has been a challenge with COVID and purchasing Howell Gardner, but it also has been fun putting it all together, and now everything being under one roof. I think one of my fortunate experiences is because I am from a very loving family, that when I decided to come out of the closet, I was not shunned, and that meant a lot to me. It helped me be able to become who I am and have confidence in who I am, and that I was still loved and accepted for who I was. It was not easy to make that decision. The hardest part was telling my parents. After that, the next was probably telling my siblings. But I was very fortunate that people were very accepting and understanding. That gave me some confidence to be able to not be afraid to be who I really am at my heart. And there are a lot of people I know who have not had that experience. Their families may have shunned them, disowned them, and it's made their life very hard to move forward. So I'm very fortunate for that loving family. You know, it's interesting that I ended up in the flower and plant world. I remember in third or fourth grade, I can't remember which now, but one of the sisters at the school, the Catholic school I went to, was going away for the summer, and she needed someone to take care of her plants. And I volunteered. So when I brought the plants home, I remember my mother saying, "What have you done? You know nothing about plants." But I nurtured her plants that summer, and they grew, and I took them back to school. And I remember my mother reluctantly telling me the story that I reluctantly had to return those plants, that I really didn't want to, and she had explained to me that they didn't belong to me and they were no longer mine, and I did my job. I promised I would do it, and I needed to return them. So it's interesting that, you know, back then I took care of these plants and then later ended up in the plant world. I do remember my father, who was a timberman, and on Saturdays quite frequently I'd go to work with him in the woods. And years later, studying floral design, my professor actually won an award for his, they called it the Southern Garden Feel, because he enjoyed working with native plant materials and branches and twigs and mosses and all these organic items. And I didn't realize that I had such a love for those, but I look back on my time with my father in the woods, and I feel like I consumed more beauty there than I realized as a child, because I'm very much attracted to an organic feel and things that look more natural and native. My mother was a very loving woman, a very sweet woman, and she really nurtured us as children, and I'm grateful that she was the mother that she was. Both of my parents, for that matter, were very caring and very loving, and sometimes I think that maybe that's our dysfunction, that we were loved too much. I think going to the Catholic school was very important in my upbringing. I think it gave me a stability in my faith, which I feel very strong about my Catholic belief. I'm a practicing Catholic. I do go to church. And I feel very strong that the sisters and the priest and the lay teachers in the school had a lot to do with forming my belief in God and my strength that I trust in God. Growing up, my father was probably as close with his siblings as I am with mine. And because of that, most of them all lived here in Natchez. My first cousins were almost like brothers and sisters. We did everything together. We went to the lake together. We went to our farm together. 3 of the siblings lived on the same street within a block, so we all played together. We all went to school together. But it's interesting to be from a very close family. I find it hard to comprehend when I meet people and they're not close to their siblings, and especially when they only have a couple of siblings. And I think about how fortunate we are to be as close with such a large family. I enjoyed being lifeguards during the summer. It was always fun to be around people. I'm very much a people person. I think one of my best learning experiences I've always thought back over is when I waited on tables. And I think part of that was that I needed a tip, because that's how I made my money. And so I learned how to sum people up pretty quickly, find out what they wanted, what they didn't want, what they liked, what they didn't like. And I think that served me well, or still serves me well in the rest of my life, because it's easier, I feel that it's easier for me to meet someone and kind of understand who they are from the beginning, so that our friendship can grow and I can help these people with what it is that they want out of life, as well as myself. To be able to express to others what I'm looking for in my life. Gosh, friends, I don't know where to start with friends. They give you the strength that you need to help you get through the times in your life when you feel like you have no one else to turn to. And I remember junior high, I believe, we had to make these banners for our religion class. And it took me a little while to figure out what I wanted to put on my banner. But I remember saying, you can say home sweet home, but I say friends, sweet friends. There's nothing like a dear friend, someone who is always there for you. They don't always have to guide and direct, but they're there to listen. They're there to support you. And friends are very, very important. I have one particular friend that I've known since the 80s. And I think it was the first person that I met and we clicked immediately. There was something that clicked between us, and we're still dear, dear friends today. We've owned several businesses together. We still talk once a week. And it's hard to believe that I could ever have lived my life without her being a part of it. But many other friends that are still there today too, that I've known for many years. But there's nothing like a good friend, a true friend. I guess one other experience that when I was young, I guess one of my art teachers told my mother that I needed to be taking art lessons, that I was obviously talented. So she took me to this art class that I started taking, and I absolutely despised it. I could not draw. I could not paint. I hated it. I kept begging her to let me stop, drop it, and she, no, you're going to stick with it. You're going to stick with it. So finally, the teacher ended up moving away, and so I just said, that's it. I'm not taking another class. I'm not going to do it. So it's ironic that years later, here I am doing Floral design, which is an art form, but I think the difference is Floral design is three-dimensional and painting and drawing is one-dimensional. And for some reason, my mind comprehends them differently. So I do find it interesting that that teacher must have seen in me some type of art form that I couldn't grasp at that age. But as I got older, I am in art, and it is a three-dimensional as opposed to a one-dimensional.